Hey, it's Darth Energizer. Um, so I was watching a movie yesterday by famous Edwin, who was blasting the immigration law that Arizona has made for being racially profiled. Uh, that was his entire argument against it. And he had other points to make. Um, but he was disappointed that nobody had ever shown their face, and I will gladly show my face because I am not afraid of telling him the truth. And I'm not bashful about it either. Um, First of all, I want to address the biggest pressing issue that's on my mind off the top of my head from his movie. He said, and I quote, "We were here. The Mexicans were here first." Yeah, that's kind of true. They were here before the United States, before Texas. True. Then this guy named Santa Anna became a dictator. I mean, it's kind of common knowledge. I don't know how well he took his history course. I don't know if he's in California or not, but we're a conservative state over here in Texas. We do believe in freedom very, very strongly. If you ask a Texan, he will very easily tell you if the government becomes too strong, there is no problem with secession. There is, and we can get into that discussion. An entire different thing. The first thing is they were here first. True, the Spanish were there before them. The Indians before the Spanish. So if we want to, use that line of argument, you want to give the Indians back their land? I mean, that's your entire argument. We got to give the Aztecs back their land. I mean, after all, Mexico is built right there in the land of the Aztecs. The Mayans are there. All these Indian tribes are down there. Oh yeah, the Spanish killed them. Never mind. Oh, that's right. If you actually studied history, several wars were fought, and then Mexico came. Mexico had their little empire. Actually, they call it Mexico. They didn't call it an empire. The United States was spreading. There were people in the East that came into Mexico, and Mexico had this immigration policy to let them in. Santa Anna decided to stop that, and then he started putting more oppressive laws, etc., until, you know what, the people in Tejas, which is what Texas was before, was Tejas, they got fed up. They were pissed. And they decided to do what any other red-blooded American would do. Although they were, Mexican. Mexican citizens, sworn to the Mexican government and their flag, their constitution, their laws. They revolted and formed the Republic of Texas. They beat Santa Anna in a war and became the Republic of Texas. There was a border dispute of whether it was the Rio Grande or another river, the Guadalupe, I think. That argument was settled by another war. You see, a lot of wars settle up. The United States at that time had annexed Texas. And if anybody reads the history of Santa Anna fighting the American armies, Santa Anna evidently had read too many books on European history and fought a European-style war. If anybody knows the United States, we do not fight European wars. We fight American wars. We fight the American way. If you read it, you'll find that we whooped. We took, in that peace treaty with Santa Anna, we took New Mexico, Arizona, and California. All these lands became ours. And California, by the way, was actually, I believe, still the Spanish control. I'd have to go back and look. But we were able, through a treaty, to gain these lands. Now, to argue at this point in history that is still Mexican land is not only stupid, it's foolish. If you want this land back, I encourage you to take up arms down in Mexico. Don't take them up here because in Texas, you come to our door with a gun. I guarantee you, we will greet you with a gun. Not just one, several. Because we're Texans, we do that kind of thing. If you want this land back, all you have to do is take it from us. But I guarantee you, we're going to shoot a bunch of you before you ever even set foot on our land. We have no problem with it. This is our homeland now. Generations of our children have lived here. Generations of my ancestors have lived here now. to argue that the land that is now controlled by the United States cannot be under United States laws. It's just one of those things where you're just looking at them and going, I don't understand your logic there. I mean, it is our border, right? Right, okay, so immigration laws by the United States, these United States, by the way, these are individual states that have their own laws. For example, Texas has laws very similar to the federal government. We also share laws like we started doing IDs. You have to vote with our ID. You have to show up with that. By the way, this idea that, that requires people to carry their IDs, that repeats federal law. I don't know anybody who doesn't have an ID. In fact, if you go to my workplace, which is Lowe's, I work at Lowe's, so the construction thing that Famous Edwin talks about, yeah, I know all about that. If he's talking Spanish to me, he comes up to me and starts speaking in Spanish, even though I've taken 3 years. 3 years of Spanish. I will look at him. And by the way, I don't speak Spanish, just so you know. I can understand it a little. If you talk really slowly in Spanish, I might be able to understand what you're asking. I might. Not guaranteed. But if you talk to me, I will look at you and tell you, let me go get somebody who speaks Spanish. Because, I'm going to make some money for my company. I don't think you should be here. Especially if you're illegal. But if you're speaking Spanish to me, I will simply look at you and be like, sure, yeah, I don't know what you're saying. I work in the paint department. People who speak Spanish come to me and ask me, do you speak Spanish? In perfect English, but they won't talk to me in English. I'm sorry, I don't understand you. I'm sorry, I don't have to learn Spanish. No big deal. The official language, not the state language. There's a difference between state language and official language, by the way, for those of you who don't have a clue about that. An official language is what everybody speaks. A state language is what the state endorses as their language. By the way, the United States has English in every government document, from east to west coast, from north to south. You've got to know that, because you read everything in English. Your school textbooks are in English. You speak Spanish to me, I'm just going to treat you. Just be like, okay, we're good. If you speak Spanish, it's over. Because I can't speak it. And I don't have to. But Edwin had made the comment that it's racially profiling to ask that he could sue a police officer for not doing his job. For not doing his job. So, for example, I'm going to use an example. It's a 55 speed limit. Somebody went 65, he pulled him over. He just finished getting in his car, saw you going by 100. He decides not to pursue, because you're going 100, he's got to get up to speed, and blah, 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 blah. So he calls one of his buddies down the road on the radio and says, you know what, there's a guy coming your way, if he hasn't slowed down, pull him over. And so, along that way, toward his buddy, you have a wreck, because you're going 100. It's no big deal. You had a wreck going 100 miles an hour. You sue that guy. I guarantee you, this is what the judge in Texas would do. I don't know about Arizona or those other states, or those liberal judges either. I don't know what they would do. But I know what they would do here. They would simply look at you and go, how fast were you going? You were going 100 and you're suing my cop? Dude, get a grip. You know the speed limit. It's not his job to read everything to you. You can read, can't you? Oh, wait, you don't? Oh, you're an illegal. Oh, no big deal. We'll just deport you back to your nation. Come on. You've got to realize there are some things that are just common sense. For example, common sense. The laws, the federal laws, say you carry ID to drive. You have to have ID to cash a check. By the way, I actually don't know anybody who doesn't carry ID. And by the way, one of my best Hispanic friends, named Liz Hernandez, pointed this out to me, that her daughter has to carry ID. We have curfews in some cities. You have to carry ID to drive, to cash a check. I mean, to do anything, you really have to have ID. I mean, if you carry your wallet, you have your ID in your wallet. I don't know anybody who goes anywhere without their wallet. So to suddenly say, well, reasonable suspicion. What is reasonable suspicion? Well, for example, I got pulled over recently. Well, not recently. It was back in '09 because I was going extremely slow because I was tired. And the cop pulled me over and he was asking me if I was okay. And he asked me the first two questions that you always hear: can I see your license and registration? I handed him the registration, and I suddenly realized I didn't have my wallet on me. This is the only time I have ever forgotten my wallet at home. And the cop asked me my name. He looked on the registration. He saw my name. He went to the back, was able to bring everything up, show my name, show my face, and blah, blah, blah. And he was able to identify me and see that I was a U.S. citizen. Now, if I was illegal, I'd probably be in the backseat of his car going back to Mexico, like I should be if I'm Mexican. When you're Hispanic, especially when you're United States Hispanics, you will find that they are very good people, especially Liz Hernandez. There is no doubt Liz Hernandez is the best Hispanic person in the world. I'm sorry if any of you think you're better. There's no doubt. Um, but famous Edwin needs to get a grip. He really does. I mean, his rant and argument about it is actually settled by the court. The judge I have up here, the website www.kbtx.com, the home headlines, and it gives me this number for the article. If you Google search the judge's ruling on the Arizona law, you will find that the judge strikes down only parts of the law, not the whole law, just parts of it. By the way, you can strike down the law for being discriminatory. He didn't strike it down for being discriminatory. In fact, he strikes down only the parts in the law that are repeated by federal law because he held that the federal law could not be repeated by the state because they would be taking the authority away from the federal government. Very simple court case. Very simple thing. And I kind of knew this was going to happen. But it will depend what the Supreme Court says. I mean, they have very good constitutional arguments. I mean, it's just repeating the same laws as the federal government. It's not taking away their authority. So we're going to see this in the Supreme Court, I guarantee you. But to argue after a judge has already ruled on it, a liberal judge, by the way, ruled on it, you will find yourself going, why is famous Edwin ranting about racial profiling? And I grant one thing, and I'll do that in part two.